the land that we interact with. I certainly live, play, and work on the traditional territory of Treaty 7 members, which includes the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda, the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, as well as a homeland to Métis Nation number 3. And I don't say this in just a perfunctory way. It has really profoundly impacted my role as an educator. And I would say as an educator with Alberta Parks, so I work in the Kananaskis region. I'm talking to you guys from Canmore. That my interactions with the Indigenous community members that I've had the pleasure to learn from has profoundly impacted the work that I do with youth and engaging them in our parks and protected areas and learning from the land. Historically, I have always kind of taken this very Western science approach. That was my educational background to get where I'm at today. But I like to use the analogy, and maybe you guys have heard this, of, if there were like 4 blind people, surrounding an elephant, and one's exploring the trunk, and one's exploring the tail, and one's exploring the ears, and maybe one the body, each individual person would have a grand understanding of an elephant from that lens. But holistically, can they really describe the essence of that animal? And I think this is the way of multiple ways of knowing, and that Western science is a great way of understanding, in this case, water, but an Indigenous perspective that looks at water from a living being that has a spirit that can speak, can hear, can feel, ultimately challenges us in how we look, and ultimately, I hope, how we treat water. So I hope that I can blend a bit of those perspectives as we move forward today. So water is incredibly precious. To me, it's such a magical substance. We have like tropical storms, and then these calm ponds. We have rivers, we have lakes. At the core, it's required for all biodiversity, including humans. So all living life needs it to survive. But as humans, as our species, we also use it for our goods and services. So we use it in Alberta. The number 1 is agriculture. So we use a huge amount of water to grow crops, not only for Albertans, Canadians, but also we export a number of products worldwide. I heard Ava yesterday talk about clothing, and certainly in my knowledge, it takes about like 4,000 liters to make one cotton t-shirt, 150,000 liters to produce a car. So we use it for many ways and goods and services that we have in our world. And we also use it as a recreational, as a spiritual place. Whenever I go down to the river, people come to Canmore all the time, and they are gravitated. It's like a magnet that pulls you. The oceans pull us. So water is this spiritual place that somehow impacts our souls. So to me, it's an incredible substance. And I know astronauts have talked about this, and maybe one day you guys will get to outer space and get to have this perspective. But when I look at this image of planet Earth, we all have this perception that we are the water planet. We have an abundance of water. But when we delve down to it, we really only have a very little tiny fraction, because most of the Earth's surface is covered in a saline solution that we know is salt water. So 97% is inaccessible to us. 3% of that is tied up in glaciers and snow and some underground aquifers that we just simply can't access, which leaves us with about 1% of that water that's available for human consumption and use. And if I were to take a water bottle and fill that completely up with all of Earth's water, it equates to simply 1 drop. So how precious is it now when we think about it in those terms? Such a small little bit. You guys have all learned about the water cycle. And, I think it's fun. You understand that water goes up, it gets evaporated, it comes down as precipitation, it will, move over the land to its lowest body of water, ultimately into an ocean. But what I really want to hit home is that this is a closed system. And I think most Canadians don't really realize that. It is closed. The water we got is the water we got. No more, no less. So the water that you drank today might have been water that dinosaurs bathed in, or maybe Lady Gaga drank, a few years ago. But what we have is what we have. So how we treat it ultimately is going to impact us. When we start looking at water and how it moves, when it hits the land, it is also moving over the topography of Earth. And we call that area, if you guys were to take your hands, everyone do this with me, take your hands, cup it. And this is like a watershed. And watersheds can be tiny, they can be quite large. But if you have your hands out, imagine water, rain falling into your hands. Where is it going to go? It's going to gravitate down to the lowest point. And so a watershed can be quite tiny, it could be a little creek, which will then flow into a larger river, another larger river, and eventually, like these Russian stacking or matryoshka dolls, it will eventually empty out into an ocean. In Alberta, we have 7 major watersheds. So if you look at the image on the left, can you picture which major watershed you live in? I live in the North Saskatchewan. Eventually, this is going to end up in the Nelson system and into Hudson's Bay. If you look at the image on the right, you can see that there are some smaller watersheds nestled into that. And I know Mallory was telling me where you guys are from. So I know there's some people that are up in the Athabasca. There's some of you guys in the Old Man. I think some of you guys are down in the Milk, the Red Deer. But what I love about this is that you get to see that watersheds connect us. They connect us as communities as the rivers wind their way and move their way into larger water bodies. So we are connected as one, not just as Albertans, but as Canadians and with the world through water. In terms of the Rocky Mountains, so you guys are part of an incredible summit that is based here in the Rocky Mountains. And these mountains are significant. I think I just heard Becky, a little bit of her presentation at the end, make reference to it, that they are the water towers. So the snow, because of the elevation of mountains, they're able to capture the snow. And because of the cold temperatures, some of that snow will remain and form into glaciers. But is it able to capture snow and to slowly release it as it melts into a river and larger rivers. In the Rockies, we have 3 major continental, I would say, river systems. So I already mentioned one, the Nelson, that goes into Hudson's Bay and the Atlantic. We have the Mackenzie that will go up into the Arctic. And then we have the Columbia, which will basically provide water for Western Canada as well as Northwestern United States. So millions of people depend on this water. And I know that you guys are talking about climate change, and this is a concern and should be a concern for everyone. And so water, what I want to say is like water availability is going to be dependent upon the snowpack that we have. So not just quantity, but also quality. And this is the idea that the river is an expression of the landscape. So as humans, we interact with the land in many different ways for the goods and services that we have, through the recreation that we do on the land, with our towns and municipalities and how we develop them. And as water is moving, it's an incredible solvent. There's nothing like water that has the ability to dissolve, so nutrients or bring up sediment. And as we mentioned, in a watershed, it's always moving down. So what we do to the land, we do to the water. And what we do to the water, we are essentially doing to ourselves. So look at your body. Most of it is water, 60 to 70%. I'm pretty squishy. And so I want you guys to think about this. If we would consider the river a living being, would we treat it the same way? And I want you to think about our Indigenous community members. Most Indigenous people look at water as a living being that is connected to all living life on planet Earth, that has a spirit, it can feel, it can hear. So would you treat it the same way? I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but something very profound happened this year, that Canada established its first Canadian river with legal personhood. I don't think I can say this properly, but the Marashikau-Chippewa River, it's also known as the Magpie River. It runs for about 300 kilometers in Quebec. And the municipality of Mingani and the Innu Council of Aquanashit, I'm not sure if I said that properly, essentially came up with 9 different resolutions or 9 different legal rights that this river had, including the right to flow, the right to maintain biodiversity, the right to be safe from pollution, and the right to sue and take legal action. Wow, that is pretty profound. Like, how does that happen? Well, as far as I understand it, people are appointed as guardians of this river. And if this river is threatened, they have the legal right to speak on behalf of that river. This isn't just happening in Canada. This is like a nation or an international movement where New Zealand, as I understand it, Bolivia, also have rivers with this idea of it having legal personhood. Which brings me to my inspiration for the water walk and what we're about to do shortly. So I want to share with you a little bit about my inspiration in that I went to a conference, gosh, I think it was like 4 years ago now. I had never heard of Josephine Mandam. And at this conference, I was introduced to this phenomenal woman. She is if you haven't heard of her, she's an Anishinaabe woman from Ontario. And she heard this prophecy that an ounce of water was going to cost more than an ounce of gold. And she looked around and she looked at how people were being disrespectful to the water. And in her culture, as an Anishinaabe woman, women were the water keepers. Or they sing and pray for the water every day. She was so disturbed by what she saw. In 2003, she started a series of water walks. She walked over 17,000 kilometers, walking the circumference of every single Great Lake and the St. Lawrence River, carrying her copper pail of water and her staff. There were other people that came and joined her. She wore out, what I read was like, I think 17 pairs of sneakers. She wore out 3 knees, but she brought awareness. And not only did she herself do these water walks, she initiated me. You guys might have seen this book. I don't know if you can see it in my hands. A whole movement of junior water walkers. So there's schools and youth all over Canada that are walking for water. The other inspiration that came for me is that I went to this conference. So that was the weekend. Literally that next Monday, I was working with a Tsuut'ina high school youth. And in that conversation that I had with them, which was a water program, they informed me that they didn't have available or access to clean, potable, so drinkable water at their school. There are no words. There are no words I can tell you that describes what I felt in my body at that moment. I had heard about these long-term boil water advisories that were in Canada on a variety of different First Nations, which is disturbing in and of itself. But somehow when my neighbor didn't have access to drinking water, it really, really hit me. Currently, the one image I have there, I think that there's still over 50 communities that don't have access, Indigenous communities within Canada that don't have access to drinking water. And the picture on the left is of one nation that's been over 26 years. 26 years. That is just not acceptable. And so that was my inspiration for wanting to invite youth that I work with to engage in a water walk. So this is my invitation to you this afternoon. We are going to individually go into our watersheds. And hopefully from this very short presentation, you realize it doesn't matter where you are always in a watershed. So even if you only have access to your backyard, that is fine. Look around your backyard, look up at the clouds. Maybe you have access to a natural area and you could find a little creek. I leave it in your hands where you go, but you're gonna have time to go and to be inspired by your watershed. I'm gonna try to play you guys a little clip. I don't know if it's gonna work. If not, we'll just skip it. So just, Mallory, you'll have to let me know if you can hear it. But this song was written by Doreen Day, who would drive her grandson, so she's an Anishinaabe woman, to school every day. And she had been to a conference and it was on water. And she had learned that at least one thing we can do every day is just to speak for the water. And so she would drive her grandson, Mash Koons, and they started to sing this song. They wrote this song, they developed it, and it is there to share. So I'm just going to play a little bit for you if you guys can hear it.
Vicki, we can't hear that, but do you want to drop the link? I can see if I can share this and if it works.
Oh, you couldn't hear it? No?
No.
Okay. You know what? I will put, while you guys are off your walk, I'll put the to into the chat, and you guys can listen to it later. But essentially the words were, water, we love you, we thank you, we respect you. It's a lullaby, so it's not, to my understanding, played with any drums or instruments. It's just a lullaby that people can sing. So maybe you guys can check it out later. But you guys are going to have, now it's going on 2:30. You're going to have till 3:10. So roughly, you know, you have about 10 minutes to transition, but you're going to have like a solid half an hour to be in your watershed. And we encourage you to take a picture with your phone, write a poem if you feel so inspired, sketch a picture, meditate, sing, and ideally have something that you can share with the group when you come back. You can tag the Canadian Rockies Youth Network at the link that's there. Mallory's also created a Jamboard, and if you're not familiar with a Jamboard, I just got introduced to it recently. It's an ability to upload your image, and we'll get to see everybody's images when we come back. So if you could do that prior to 3:10, that would be ideal. And then when you guys come back, we'll be able to share your discoveries, and we'll have some time to have a facilitated discussion on these reflective questions. What inspires you about your watershed? Is creativity, art, an effective tool to advocate for water? And David Suzuki said, our identity includes the natural world, how we move through it and how it sustains us. How will you move through the world in your watershed after this summit? So we'll have about 20 minutes of a facilitated discussion when you guys come back, and that will take us to 3:30. So again, you guys got till 3:10. Mallory will put the Jamboard link in the chat. Take a picture, write a poem, sketch, whatever you like, and then have something ideally that you can share and put on that Jamboard and link to the Instagram page.
Thank you, Vicki. Oh, sorry, Mallory. Thank you, Vicki. I'd just like to reiterate that, like, if you're thinking about doing your Hope into Action contest, you can take a picture and tag us in the post, and you'll be entered to win that huge prize package. So please do that.
And I'm just going to change the settings for the Jamboard, so bear with me. I should be able to change them so that anybody can access the Jamboard. However, just have that photo ready to upload. We might be able to find, or you could just tag, you could put an Instagram post out and tag us in it, and hashtag Walk for Your Watershed 2021, and then that will enable us to pull those up on the Instagram as well. So that's an alternative. We also wanted to just mention, some of you might not be able to go outside outside. I did have a question asking for that. So if you can just literally sit on your patio, or your watershed is everywhere. It's in the air. Vicki went over the water cycle. So just be outside. And I'm also going to drop a link in for the Rockies Repeat Youth Challenge of connecting to your headwaters and your glaciers. So you could also do that if you have no ability to be outside.
Yeah, and just take this time to enjoy yourself. It's gonna be fun. So
thanks, Vicki.
Okay, so we'll see you guys at 3:10.
3:10. BRB.
Okay.
Hey, Ben, it's Nick. Are we still? TTPS in front and remove the spaces, and that's the link to the Jamboard.
Okay. Yes, I think they should have heard that. Okay. Alex, if you are here, could you put up a timer? I don't know if he is.
I just changed the restrictions on the Jamboard link, so you should be able to add your Walk for Your Watershed creations to the new Jamboard link, or even maybe the old one, who knows. Thanks,
Great,
guys.
there we go. There's a
if you look in the chat, Mallory has put the link for the Jamboard. So we're really hoping that you guys will upload a picture that you took, or a picture of a poem you wrote, or a drawing that you made, something that represented your watershed to you, or that you felt inspired by from within your watershed. So if you want to do that, that would be great. And Ben has also put a link in for Mentimeter. So there, that reflects the different reflective questions that I just kind of quickly introduced to you before you guys took off. Do we have a sense of how many people are back, Mallory? Can you tell?
47 participants. So I think that there were 56 to start. So give it a minute. And if you are just joining back with us, just feel free to click that Mentimeter poll. And we're going to start kind of interacting and sharing what we've learned and following up with those discussion questions. So click the Mentimeter poll in the chat, and we'll be sharing those with everybody in a moment here. Okay, well, we'll start by sharing our screen right here. We did have one of our participants. She was also a speaker at last night's campfire session, and she tagged us in a couple different images. She's going out and doing some watercolor.
Awesome. Oh, nice.
And oh, some poo. And there we go. So hopefully Skylar will have a picture in the Jamboard pretty soon. Thanks so much for sharing, Skylar.
Super great.
And these are a couple photos that we got. So does anybody who shared those photos in the Dropbox want to turn on their mic or explain a little bit more behind the scenes?
I guess I'll explain that one picture with all the people. That was just us kind of having fun because we thought it was going to rain and it didn't. So we found the sprinkler and yeah, you know, playing under the sprinkler because why not?
Love it. Thanks, you guys, for that. I'm looking at this sprinkler and, you know, wondering like how marvelous it is that we can turn on a tap and voila, there's water. And how that lawn can, you know, be interact with that as well, right? How we live in our homes and what we do on the land, right, in our home environments can have a huge impact. Where I live here in Canmore, I live probably only about 100 meters from the river, but I actually live on the river because I live on this alluvial deposit. And I know like a few years ago, I walked and someone had poured oil. I didn't think anyone did this anymore, but they literally poured oil like onto the ground from changing their cars. And I was like, oh my God, that oil is going to go through the gravels and end up, you know, in the gravels and eventually will connect to the river. So it's all connected. So lots of inspiration when we walk, even just in our own neighborhood and how we interact with that. So I'm just looking at what's on the screen, the Mentimeter. So we have Connect Charter. Oh, that was a school. Okay. Sylvan Lake, Canmore, Calgary 37, Morinville. Oh, this is great, you guys. And
Jasper.
So Mallory, do you have that first question up? How does your watershed inspire you?
Absolutely. We'll just start flipping.
Cold water.
And yeah, don't be afraid to share because it's all, yeah, like it's kind of no pressure. You can just throw in whatever you really feel. So
it's interesting. I love these words. I'm not sure if this the way it works in Mentimeter, if it's like when you do those wordles, so the more it gets used, makes it bigger. But what I'm seeing is a huge recreational trend there. So people love to go. And I would agree, especially during the pandemic, so many people have been gravitating to get outside. Certainly with Alberta Parks, we've been noticing a huge increase in visitation on our land base.
And once again, those are just in the, that Mentimeter is just in the chat box. So just open it up on your website, your a web browser, and you can fill that out. So we got more now. So to travel, soothing, magical, purifies, feet in cold water, calm, flow, cycle, play, which is nice.
I love how it just keeps getting more and more.
It's
I love that
perfect.
I'm seeing the theme like purify, peaceful, soothing. These speak to like that, you know, the spiritual side. And, you know, it is documented. I don't know if you guys know of cortisol. It's a stress hormone. And they've actually done studies that people who spend time in nature, your cortisol levels actually decrease. It's an actual response. So for our health and wellness, our spiritual connection to the land is a huge component to natural areas. What else am I seeing? Heart of the land. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's go to the next one, which was, is creativity, art, an effective tool to advocate for water? And I saw some of you guys have some there. I'm certainly no artist, but I am profoundly impacted by art, and increasingly so, because in my mind, it can be a really effective tool to convey a message. And I'm just wondering, have you explored that as a tool? I know you guys are going to be engaged, or some of you will be engaged in action projects. And I guess I throw this out there because action can take so many different forms. And so I just want to hear what you guys have to say. Of course, it's the most engaging way to connect with people. Yeah, it certainly does resonate with many people, especially on an emotional level. I heard that evokes emotion. Yes, with more and more different ways of communicating importance, we can effectively reach out to different kinds of people. It's different. I missed the last part. Messages, I think. Oh, different interests. Okay. Yes, sure is. You can connect everything when you fully immerse yourself and put yourself into a position to connect to the water. It evokes emotion to inspire others to connect. Awesome. Does anybody have a piece of art that resonates with them, or an image? Have you observed something? I have one in my mind that I will share with you that really impacts me, especially when I think of climate change and art.
I'll just say this. If anybody wants to share, they can message Mallory and I, and we can put you on mic and you can share with us.
Can they just unmute, Ben? No?
We had some problems last session, so we're just being a little bit more careful right now.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we can't actually, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I didn't realize that.
I'll just keep flipping through these slides. And if anybody wants to pop in the chat, if your image comes up and if there's anything you want to share, we have this like beautiful willow, it looks like. It looks like some people got out to, one scene looks a little bit like Cochrane.
Wow, these are amazing.
Shay would like to share about her walk, so I will unmute her.
Perfect.
Or if somebody else can do that, then if you can do that.
On it.
I love this. Who is this piece? Feel free to add to the Jamboard. Who, like, if you were the creator, if you want to add where you're joining us from. That's a beautiful image.
Hi there. So just on the previous slide that you were on, the top left picture and the bottom right picture, those are the ones I took. That's about a 5 to 10 minute walk away from my house. So I live in Calgary. So that's the Bow River, just at Edworthy Park there. And I'm super lucky to live so close to like actual hiking trails while still living in the city. And I get out and I use these trails a lot and go down to all the way to the river or just stay at this lookout. And like I really connect with the river that way. So yeah, I'm really lucky to be able to come like right there so quickly.
Beautiful. And I love that I'm just upstream of you, right? Like, I love how we're connected through this. And I think I just saw on the chat flash up that, is it Suzanne from Palisades? That the other image of the waterfall was from the Palisades Center in Jasper. Anything else that you guys want to share about that and how it inspires you?
Sure, yeah, it's Sanna Vanderos here. I work at the Palisades Center as an educator in Jasper and National Park. And so this is Swift Creek that I shared a couple of photos of on these pages, and my piece of art that inspired me by sitting by the river, by the creek. And partly I shared it because the youth summit has taken place here, and it's a connection that some of us have that shared that time here. And so just, yeah, it's a beautiful place of inspiration and connection. Thanks for your presentation and the opportunity to share.
Oh yeah, thank you for joining in. That's awesome. And I'm curious about the drawing that Sky did. Sky, do you want to speak to your image and how it inspired you?
I will ask him if he wants to unmute.
Okay, not to put you on the spot. It's open-ended. I just love the
It's your choice.
drawing.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, so I actually had a little bit of an adventure when I went out. Our house, I live in an acreage and we back out onto a slough. And so I haven't been out into the slough. I went out last year, but like in the spring. So it's probably been like a good year since I've actually went far out. And so I decided to go out and immediately realized that my rubber boots had a hole in it. So I'm like, okay, we're just going to walk around with 1 foot basically just in the water. And then as I'm going along, all of a sudden, because my dog was following me along, she all of a sudden found a bone of something, no idea what. It's like, okay, cool. We found a bunch of moose poo everywhere. And then I finally sit down and I go to start painting. And then my dog decides she's going to lie in the mud and then come and try to jump on top of me as I'm sitting on like a log. And so now my pants are full of mud from her, but the painting stayed okay. It didn't get mud on it, so that was good. But otherwise, it was good to get back out there, and I definitely want to go back out there again throughout all the summer and that, because I definitely miss going out there, and it just brought me back to, you know, when I was younger and I would basically live out in the bush. So it was definitely fun.
You sound really lucky to have such access to that space, Sky. And I love how you're like the interconnections, right? With the moose and your dog and the mud, right? And that we're all connected. So
yeah, it was an adventure.
Nice. All right. And then we have a few more photos. Wow, these are really artistic. Anybody want to speak to those?
Okay, I'll keep kind of flipping through. Feel free to just drop it in the chat if you want to let us know what slide you were on, if you want to speak a bit more about how they connect to your watershed. Obviously, everything needs water, so everything's going to be connected.
I'm loving the perspective of the grass.
Oh, that's it.
No, that's okay. You know, it's because we can take different perspectives in how we look at the watershed, right? So you can look at that one that you've got there, the Rockies repeat. Wow, like massive, and then at a really small scale. So I like that. All right. Well, let's move on to the last one. We just got about 5 more minutes. And this idea that our identity includes the natural world, how we move through it, and how it sustains us. So ultimately wondering, how will you guys move through the world and your watershed after the summit? And I know you're getting lots of different presentations. We've been focusing on watersheds here, but just how will you move through the world? Is there anything that's already starting to shift or change, or do you look at anything in a different way about how you may interact with the land and with your watershed? So I'm seeing thoughtfully, with care, everything connects, less impactful to the world.
So if you haven't had a chance to enter your feelings in the chat, you still can do that. So I'm seeing a couple more pop up.
Yeah, take more time to understand my watershed, why it's important, where it comes from. I am water, we are water, water is life. Yeah, so you can see actually why water is a theme that runs through the curriculum. You guys start learning about water, gosh, I think like in grade 1, really, all the way through at different levels. And the whole Indigenous perspective, I think, of thinking of water as living, I think that's the part for me that I keep trying to look at it, because if we think of it as a living thing, how will we interact with it? How will we treat it? And that can be, you know, water quantity, like how much water we're using, versus water quality. How are we impacting like the essence of the water, and how our actions contribute either positively or negatively to that. So you can look at water from both lenses, you know, water quality, water quantity, and then is it a living thing? You know, the rights of personhood, is that going to be, you know, increasingly, are we going to see that attached to more rivers? Would you consider being a guardian of a river? Lots of different things of how we can approach how we are in the world. I know my husband, he's a gardener, and we started off with, I think, like 2 or 3 rain barrels. Anybody want to guess how many rain barrels I've got in my backyard now? It's ridiculous. I think we have 13, and he wants to put a couple more in right now. So he's taken on water quantity to a great extent in our world. I'm looking for any other comments in the chat. Well, you guys, I really want to, I'm not seeing anything else there. We're just coming up on time here. So I really want to thank you for inviting me. I want to thank Ben and Alexander and Thomas. There's a bunch of you guys. I think Ava was part of it too, part of the group that coordinated this. I want to raise my hat to everybody who's joining in and being an active participant. It's super inspiring as an environmental educator that works with youth to see the actions that you guys are doing. Like, it is, wow, my heart is overflowing with what you have accomplished. And I will turn, I don't know if my screen's still shared. Can you see it, Mal?
You're all good. There's no screen right now.
No screen. Let me see if I can share it. My contact information is there, and I welcome anyone to contact me. I know they are starting a mentorship program, or if you're doing an action project, I am more than happy to work with any of you in any way I can. So thanks to you. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and hopefully tomorrow I can participate as a participant as well. I look forward to that.
Thank you so much, Vicki. That was such a nice session. Oh yeah, we have some clapping for you in our classroom. So,
thanks, you guys.
Yeah, it's just very nice to, you know, take some time to enjoy your watershed. So, yeah. So, do you want to go, Mallory? I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to take a second to just plug one of our challenges that we partnered with Rockies Repeat. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Awesome. Somebody can just pin me. So if you tuned into last night's session, you may have noticed there were some really cool artists talking about how they're connecting to their watersheds and how they're connecting to climate change. And we have partnered with them. So together we collaborated and created a youth action challenge. All of the details are posted in the chat. And I obviously have them open on this page. Essentially, they want you to travel virtually because of the COVID times, or if you're able to get out there sometime this summer to one of the locations that they have gone to. All of the locations are listed below, and they want you to draw the same landscapes that they are painting, the same landscapes that Catherine White painted. And their photos are serving to kind of act as a timeline and showing us how climate change is affecting our glaciers, which transitions into a session that we're going to be hosting tomorrow. So if you read this challenge and this seems like something you want to be doing, feel free to do this challenge while we are following along and doing the climate change tomorrow morning at 10. So you can be drawing, you can be learning all at the same time, just something to do with your hands other than stare at a screen. So all of the details are on there. I've dropped them in the chat. it's basically paint your glacier, paint your headwaters, because as Vicki said, your mountains are your headwaters, and those are located in the Canadian Rockies. So it's really important that we protect that valuable resource. It's not renewable as we might think. That's it. I'll pass it back over to Ben.
Great, yeah. So now next up, we just have a 15-minute break. So you can go enjoy that. I'm just going to tell you up next, we have kind of a reflection hour or a speaking circle. Daryl isn't able to make this one, who was our presenter for then. So you can join. It's going to be very just kind of low energy. The youth organizers chatting, and you can come chat with us if you'd like. But yeah, it's going to be more just a reflection of the day, just something to look back on. So yeah, that will be in 15 minutes.
Also great if you decide that like you want to be involved in help organizing next year's summit. Cool to chat with the youth organizers, kind of pick their brains a little bit. It's not streamed, so you can turn on your video. It's more of an impromptu, like think of like the meet and greet. It's like we'd have snacks and chips and be drinking pop at this time.